Hello everyone. In this chapter we're going to cover Lua and a basic intro to programming. So if you've already used Lua before or you're very familiar with programming, you might be able to skip through a few of these chapters, and I'll cover later which ones can be passed by. So Lua is an extension programming language. This means it's actually extended from C, and that's clean C, so just the programming language C. And what that means is it's actually created on top of C as an extension to the language itself. It is a very lightweight language. It clocks in under a couple megabytes, so it's very small. Because of this, you see it on a lot of embedded systems. Things such as toasters and refrigerators can use Lua because of its very lightweight size. It's also very easy to use. Because of the way that Lua is created, it's very simple to get started on. It takes very little. You don't need any special IDE or tools to develop in Lua. You can just start with the most basic notepad and begin creating Lua code. It's also very readable. So Lua as a language is very easy to read. Even with very little programming experience and knowledge, you can easily understand what is happening in the code as long as it's written properly. And it's dynamically typed. We'll get into this later, but basically everything you create, every variable you create, does not need to be defined specifically as what type of variable it is. This makes it very easy to understand visually, but can cause complications if you don't properly write your code. It also supports multiple programming paradigms. So for those with any sort of CS background, Lua does support procedural, functional, object-oriented programming, data-driven, and other programming paradigms. So you can write Lua in whatever style you feel most comfortable in. So we're going to go ahead and look at some of the resources available. All of these links are provided in the program files of this section, and these are just helpful links for Lua. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at a few of these. So this is the Lua manual. This is basically the Lua's website manual for the language. It is very dry. It's a lot of material covered in a very technical way, but it is quite helpful for when you need to understand more about how the language works. I would recommend reading the introduction, and then we're going to go over the next few chapters in this chapter. So we also have the Lua user group, which is lua-users.org. This is a pretty helpful website. It also has the wiki, which we'll get to next, and other links to more sites that you might be able to use to get a better understanding of the language. The wiki itself has a great set of add-ons, FAQs, little snippets of code if you need little bits of code, and it just has generally a great set of resources. There's also a common website that people use for programming questions, Stack Overflow, and I provided a link to go to the questions for Stack Overflow. As you'll see, a lot of these are based on Corona, so a lot of Corona questions are asked here, as well as just general Lua questions, and this is a great place to go if you have a question about the language. And then lastly, the Programming in Lua book. So you can find this on Amazon as well as many libraries. This and the reference manual in its book form are both very useful books to have. I personally prefer to work in the online form, but if you like having a nice physical copy, this is available for purchase. So that sums up the basics of Lua. In section 2, we're going to cover syntax and conventions. If you do have programming experience, I would recommend sticking around on this stage because we're going to go over the differences of programming in Lua as compared to other languages. So let's see in section 2.